Hi, today I'm going to be telling you all of the books that I read in spring. However, I am going to be excluding the month of March because I did do a wrap up for March on its own, but I kind of decided that I don't really like doing that, so I think I would prefer if I want to do wrap ups in the future to just do them seasonally. I think I like that a lot better. So, since I already did March, I'm just going to be telling you the books that I read in April and May. So, these are the books that I read in April and May. So, the books that I read for spring 2023. The first book that I read in April was The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. If you saw my nighttime book haul, I hauled this in there and I had already read it by the time I filmed that book haul. And so I already knew when I filmed that I loved this, but I can continue to tell you here that I absolutely loved this book so much. I had never read Murakami before, but I had been really wanting to, and I finally found his book at a used bookstore. Well, I found it at a half-priced books, and I went in and they just had this one and A Wild Sheep Chase, and so I just picked this one. I didn't know anything about it. I just read the back of it, and this is the one I picked from those two. And then I started reading it immediately once I bought it, and I was completely taken by surprise. I mean, I had no idea what to expect, so I didn't have any expectations going into it, but it was just, oh my, it was so good. I just started reading it, and I didn't have any plans of, oh, I want to, write things down and really think about it. I didn't have any plans like that, but I think a quarter of the way into it, I was like, gotta get out my pen and my pencil and my paper, and I gotta get sticky notes. But I was out of town, I didn't have any sticky notes, so I was having to use a bunch of random pieces of paper to put where I'd put my eventual sticky notes. And I was just so enthralled with this book. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I wasn't reading it, and then I just couldn't stop reading it. And this book is just filled with so many cool characters, and I love them so much. The main character of this book is a man named Toru Okada, and he lives in, I guess, the suburban part of Tokyo with his wife Kumiko, who she works for a magazine full time, and Toru Okada has actually quit his job, so now he just does basically the housework and things. And one day their cat, Noboru Wataya, goes missing, and since he's home all the time, he's tasked with finding this cat, and it's his search for this cat that takes him on a crazy adventure into meeting all of these really unique individuals that have so many crazy stories to tell you that just upend Toru Okada's life and completely change his life and who he is as a person. And it's amazing. I mean, the characters in this book were definitely my favorite. My favorite characters in this book were Mei Kasahara and Lieutenant Mamiya. I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce their names, but that's how I've just been pronouncing it. And I absolutely loved, specifically through Lieutenant Mamiya, you get to learn about the Japanese occupation of Manchuria and then the eventual Soviet Union invasion of Manchuria. And I was so fascinated by that. Oh my gosh, the exploration into the Japanese occupation in Manchuria was so good. I just was so enthralled by it. I don't know. And the way that Murakami connects the events of what's happening in the current time with Toru Okada to the events of the story that were being told of during the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, so good. And I really loved the evil characters in this book as well. Boris the Manskinner and Noboru Wataya were absolutely terrifying, but so captivating to read about. I just loved this book. I absolutely loved it. I have not stopped thinking about it, and I want to reread it, and I hate rereading books. I don't like rereading books. I like to reread parts of books, but I don't like to just go back to page one and then just read every single word all the way back. I don't know. I just don't enjoy doing that. But there's so many parts of this book that I want to reread. And I have reread. Like, I constantly go to my sticky notes and will just read the pages that I sticky noted because it's so good. Do you want me to read you a quote? I'll read you a quote. I'll read you just one quote. I'll read you this quote by Lieutenant Mamiya, one of the characters that I really love. I have lived my life in total defeat. I have lost. I am qualified. I said it wrong. As you can see from having read my letter, I have lived my life in total defeat. I have lost. I am lost. I'm qualified for nothing. Through the power of the curse, I love no one and am loved by no one. A walking shell, I will simply disappear into darkness. The next book that I finished was The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I have a reading vlog for this. There's supposed to be a part 2, and I swear there will be a part 2. I swear. This is my last big Dostoevsky book that to read. I mean, I can always reread his other ones, of course, but this is my last one. It's like new, first time reading. It was probably my least favorite of the 4. What I'm thinking of as his big books is Brothers Karamazov, Demons, The Idiot, and Crime and Punishment. The Adolescent is also quite lengthy, I think, but this was probably my least favorite of the 4, just because I thought the last quarter of the book was just really boring to me, which it really pains me to say that. I had heard before going into this that some people said that this was more boring than his other books, and I was so offended. I was like, how dare they say that? And I would never, ever, ever be bored by anything Dostoevsky would write. It wouldn't happen. But like, I kind of got there was a part, like quite a big chunk. I'm not saying I wouldn't. It wasn't a small part. Like, there's quite a big chunk. Like, honestly, the second half of the book, I kind of was like I was just kind of bored, The first half of the book I loved. I thought it was so interesting. But the problem was that in the second half of the book, all the characters that I found so interesting weren't there, really. They kind of go away for quite a while, and so they're not really there that much. First half of this book I was completely enthralled by it, but I felt like the second half I just kind of I don't think slowed down is the word. It's just my favorite characters disappeared, okay? And I was bored with the characters I had to deal with. I didn't find them as interesting. But one thing I did really love about reading this book was having already read Demons and Brothers Karamazov. Prior to this, there's a lot of things in this book, like concepts or types of people, types of ideologies, that you can kind of see him begin to play around with in this book, that he explores so much more deeply and so much better, honestly, in Brothers Karamazov and in Demons. So it was really interesting to me in that sense, that you can kind of see the progress that he makes with writing this book to writing Demons, and then to eventually writing the Brothers Karamazov. So I did still really like this book. I mean, I say it's the least favorite, okay? Like, I still really enjoyed it. I just think that in terms of the 4, this probably ranks last for me. The next book that I read was another book that I hauled in the nighttime book haul video, and that was Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I knew nothing, as I explained in that video. I didn't know anything about this book. I just knew that it took place during the Civil War. I picked this book up in, I think, the beginning of May, and my plan was that I was going to spend all of May reading it, but I didn't need a whole month to finish it, because I literally finished this whole book in 4.5 days. I was so captivated by this book. Oh my gosh, I could not stop reading it. I loved it so much. I could not sleep. I remember one night I had to go to sleep. I had to wake up at like 6:30 in the morning, and it was already midnight, and I'm like, I have to go to sleep. I need to put the book down. But the idea of putting the book down and not knowing what happens next, which I just couldn't do it. And so I just kept reading and reading, and I literally pulled an all-nighter, and I didn't get any sleep. I didn't regret it. I didn't regret it because I had so much fun reading this book. Scarlett O'Hara is the main character, and she definitely is a brat, but I found her personality to be so refreshing for a classic, and I loved it. I really did. I would say that I didn't find the main character's viciousness, stubbornness, annoying until the very end of the book. The very end of the book was when I was like, you gotta snap out of it, girl. Like, what are you doing? She definitely is quite a mean person, but Margaret Mitchell, where is it? In an interview, there's like an expert of an interview somewhere. I swear I read it somewhere in here. But she said that she wanted to write a book about people with a lot of gumption. So people that can go through horrendous things and survive. And I think Scarlett's definitely one of those people. She is one of 3 daughters of a wealthy plantation owner who lives in Georgia. And the Civil War breaks out, and it's basically the story of her surviving the Civil War, and not just the Civil War, but also Reconstruction afterwards, but specifically presidential Reconstruction is what this goes through. So it goes through right before the Civil War starts, and then beginnings of the Civil War, and then as the Civil War comes to Georgia and comes to Atlanta, and then the presidential Reconstruction that goes on after the war has ended. I really, really loved it, and I am shocked that Margaret Mitchell, this is her only book that she ever wrote, which is insane to me. I know that she was, well, I say I know. I have vague memory of when I was looking her up and things, that she was a journalist, and so she wrote a lot of stuff during her life, but she eventually got mobility issues or something, and so she wasn't able to continue working. Then she decided to write a book. And so this is her only book, which is insane to me that she wrote this whole, like, what? I don't know. That's just, I can't grasp my mind around the fact that this is her only novel that she's ever written. I don't know how, but apparently it is. It blows my mind that she was able to write such a huge novel with no background in writing novels. I mean, she does have a background in writing, but not writing books, so I really loved this. The next book that I read was actually an ebook. I read The Thorn Birds by Colleen. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Makulo? I feel like I should know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. She released this in 1977, and I read this on ebook again. It is a multi-generational novel about a family who basically lives in Australia for most of the book. They start out living in New Zealand, but pretty early on in the book, they end up moving to Australia to their aunt's sheep farm because their aunt doesn't have an heir to the farm, and so she wants them to inherit it when she dies. So that's in the Australian outback. Is it Doghetta, I think, is specifically the name of it. I don't think it's a real place, though. I think the name Doghetta is fictional. So it deals with multiple generations of the Cleary family. But I'd say the 2 central characters in this book are Maggie, who is the only daughter of the Cleary family, and then Father Ralph, who is a Catholic priest. There's kind of a forbidden romance with them. I wouldn't say that's, the central part of the book. Maybe it is. Maybe their romance is, it's a very integral part of the book. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, is what I'm trying to say. This isn't just 750 pages of like a forbidden romance or anything. I did really enjoy reading this book as well. I found Maggie to be obviously so annoying at times because she's very naive. She basically isn't taught anything about the world and how the world works. And so when she does get thrown out into the world, she knows nothing. And it's really heartbreaking to see. I don't mean annoying as if I think that she's an annoying person. I think just her circumstances. Sometimes you're just like, Maggie, what are you doing? But you understand why she's doing it. And it reminded me a lot of one of my grandmothers, actually, who was just kind of the same way and went through some similar things as Maggie did in terms of knowing absolutely nothing. Reading this book and kind of getting that first-hand account of Maggie being put in these situations and knowing nothing, it was so infuriating. Like, it's so upsetting, and I just felt so bad for her about how she was just so neglected and not told, educated on anything. I still really enjoyed reading her character. I would say, though, that my favorite characters were probably her eventual two children, which are focal points of the book later on. As I said, it's a multi-generational novel, so Maggie is not just the main character the whole time. Eventually it does go on to her children, and I loved her children. I thought they were so interesting, and I loved reading both of her kids so much, especially the daughter. I loved her, and I really liked Father Ralph too. This book just had a lot of characters that I did really enjoy. It didn't drive me crazy or anything like Gone with the Wind did. Gone with the Wind drove me out of my mind when I was reading it. I don't know why. I couldn't sleep. I was just losing my mind over what was happening. The Thornbirds didn't do that to me. I didn't have that big of an emotional or stressful reaction to it, but I did really like it. And I have been thinking about maybe picking up another book by her eventually, because I think she has quite a few. So maybe I will someday. The next book that I read was also a ebook, and it was The Pearl by John Steinbeck, which he released in 1947. This is the novella that John Steinbeck wrote that was inspired by his trip that he took with his friend Ed Ricketts to the Gulf of California. And this was inspired by the people that he met there. So the main character of this novel, or I guess novella, is a man named Kino. He's a Native American man, and his wife is also present, his wife Juana, and then they have a son, a little baby boy named Coyotito, I think. So Kino, Juana, and Coyotito are the family, and they're pearl divers. So they go out in the sea every day, and Kino dives for pearls. They sell them, and that's how they make money. And one day they find a really big pearl, a pearl that could bring them a lot of money, that could make them very wealthy, give them everything they've ever dreamed of. Specifically, Kino, the main thing that he thinks about is how it would give his son an education and help them have that education that their communities don't get. And you see how a lot of bad, evil things start coming their way because now all of a sudden they're in possession of a very wealthy item. I just find John Steinbeck's writing really comforting for me at this point. I love laying in bed just reading a John Steinbeck book. I don't even know why I find his writing so comforting to me. I don't know, but I love it. And I'm really happy that I still have works by him that I haven't read yet. I mean, his characters could be doing the simplest things, and I just find it so comforting. So I did really enjoy this. The next thing that I read was also a novella, and I also read it on Kindle, and that was First Love by Ivan Turgenev, which he published in 1860. I picked this up because I had heard a couple people mention it previously, quite a while ago, but I had heard people say that this novella had a shocking twist in it, and it seems so ordinary, but there's just a twist, it takes a turn, and they always made it sound so interesting, so that's why I picked it up. I don't know, I was kind of disappointed. I didn't really like it that much. The thing that I assume is what people call the twist of I keep trying to say novel, the novella, the twist that people kept referring to. I didn't think it was that shocking at all. I thought it was kind of obvious early on that that's what was happening. I remember thinking when it happened, when it was made blatantly obvious, basically, I was like, surely this isn't what people are referring to as the twist of the book, right? So I kept reading thinking that there was going to be something huge gonna happen, like something really shocking, and it just, no, nothing. I just thought this, I don't know, I don't get it. I don't know. It's quite a little mundane little novella, and I'm not really sure what about it is that amazing. The novella starts where there's these guys sitting together, and one of them decides to recount the time that he fell in love as a 16-year-old boy. And so basically the whole novella is the story of him falling in love for the first time, and it was when he was 16 and his family had moved out to the countryside. And after they moved out there, then an impoverished princess moved in near them, and she had a daughter, and this is the time that he first fell in love. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was fine. I didn't hate it or anything. There's nothing wrong with it. I went into it, I don't know, I kept hearing people say that there was some, sinister twist, or, there's just something you never expect. Like, it really takes a turn. And I don't know. I think the twist is not that shocking and not that crazy. I feel like it's quite a normal thing that's happened a lot of times in the world. I don't think it's that sinister of a twist or that crazy of a twist. Honestly, probably after I film this video, first love will just vanish from my memory, and I won't remember. I think I'd remember the disappointment from a twist though. So maybe I'll remember something about it eventually, because I was disappointed. Okay, I don't know. The next book that I read was A Wild Sheep Chase by Haruki Murakami. I will be honest, I don't understand anything about this book. I understand nothing. Literally nothing. I cannot come to I don't know what any of it means. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what any, I just, my mind is blank. I have no clue. This book is about a man who runs an advertising agency, and he posts an advertisement that includes a picture of a sheep with a black star like this. And because of this, a mob boss's secretary comes and finds him and tells him that he has to take down this advertisement, and he has to find the sheep that's in this photo. And he has a month to do so, or else. Like, I don't know what the or else is, but you have to find this sheep. And so the main character starts going throughout Japan. Well, he basically he goes to northern Japan specifically to find this sheep and to start searching for it. And they don't have any names, so that's why I keep referring to. Some of them have nicknames, but you don't know anyone's, like, no one has a name in this book. And I don't know if this is the third book in this trilogy, but I didn't know that till after I read it, because I was wondering if maybe the reason I don't understand anything is because it's the third book, but I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure you can read them individually. I also hated the main character, which is weird because I wouldn't say he's that different from any of the other Murakami books I've read. There's another one that I'm gonna show you after this. But for some reason, I just hated him. I couldn't stand him for some reason, and I don't really know why. I just found him disgusting, and I didn't like him. I didn't like really the first half, but the last part of this book I did really like. I loved the part where he finally gets to northern Japan and everything that he starts seeing when he gets to northern Japan. I loved the ending of this though. That was my favorite part of the book, and I think that getting through the first part was worth it for the ending, because I really loved the last part of this book. After I read the book, I was trying to, write stuff down and like think about it, but I literally could not think. I had no clue. I could not come up with any ideas as to what any of this meant. And so I really hate just looking things up instead of, trying to think of it on my own, but I couldn't come up with anything. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to look it up because I don't know. But I tried looking up what the book was about. And the first thing I clicked on, I was kind of like skimming through the article or whatever review, trying to see if, this is what I wanted to read. And I remember in like bold letters, it said something about how this is a book that you're supposed to think about on your own. There's not a set meaning. Like Murakami wants you to read it on your own and to come up with your own ideas. And so then I got terrified and I exited out of the page and I'm still left knowing nothing. I got so scared when I read that because I was like, oh crap, like I definitely can't look up what it means now. So I exited out and I have just, I don't know though. Like I get that, everyone's supposed to have their own meaning. I have nothing. I don't know. I have no idea what it means. I don't know. I guess I'll just never know what it means. And that's fine. I don't really mind. The next book is the last book that I have to show you. It's the last book that I read for spring. And it's another Murakami and is Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. I also hauled this in that nighttime book haul. I was kind of disappointed by this, which is really painful for me to say. I was so excited to start reading this because Wind Up Bird Chronicles, it was so good. I loved it. And so I was so excited to pick this one up. And I don't know. I felt like it was just such a disappointment compared to the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And maybe it's not fair to compare the two, but I mean, they're from the same author. Like, why can't I compare the two? This book has two main characters, really. You have a boy named Kafka. That's not his real name, but the name that he takes in the book is Kafka, and he's 15 and he runs away from home. Then you have another character who's 60-something, and that's Nakata, and he is this older man who's considered dumb. He can't read, he can't write. He basically got into an accident when he was really young and he lost all of his memory of everything. We have both of them and they're both going on this journey. Oh, I guess another important thing is that Nakata talks to cats. Now, Nakata was my favorite part of this book. I loved him. Honestly, I think I kept reading for Nakata. Kafka, I didn't care for. I don't know. I don't know if it's because he was 15. I don't think so, though. I'm not sure. I just didn't care for Kafka. I didn't hate him or anything. I wasn't interested in him, really. Nakata was my favorite. I loved him so much. I found his character the most interesting, and I was so excited every time the chapter was from Nakata's point of view. Compared to the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, this one just fell flat for me. And it's weird because this book was written after the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. So Kafka on the Shore was published in 2002, and then the Wind Up Bird Chronicle was published in 1994. So the Wind Up Bird Chronicle was published in 1994, which was first, and this was published afterwards. But it was weird because when I finished this, I didn't know this had been published afterwards, and I thought that maybe he had written this before the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. I just think the Wind Up Bird Chronicle goes so much deeper into things that are kind of similar. I feel that there's quite a few topics in this that are similar to topics covered in the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, but the Wind Up Bird Chronicle goes into them in so much more depth and explains them so much better. I mean, I started out this book, writing things down. I have it in here. Yeah, I have a page that I was starting to, in the beginning, I'm like, okay, there's this character, and then I'm like writing all these things about them. And then, as you can see, it's quite empty because about a little bit before halfway into the book, it wasn't intriguing me enough to want to, write a bunch of stuff down and keep track of things and try to figure things out. I can't decide if, would I have enjoyed this book more if I had read it first and I had read the Wind Up Bird Chronicle second. I feel like maybe I would have. Maybe I would have enjoyed this more if I didn't have the Wind Up Bird Chronicle on my mind. And I think another thing that kind of dampened my enjoyment of this was I felt that things were explained more in this book. They're just kind of given to you easier, if that makes sense. I feel like in the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, I had to think more. But with this one, I feel that it was kind of fed to me more, which kind of dampened my enjoyment of it. Because in the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, I felt like a sleuth, trying to figure out what's going on. And same with A Wild Sheep Chase. Even though A Wild Sheep Chase, I didn't come to any conclusions. I feel like a detective. Like, what's going on? This one, I didn't feel that way. I feel that a lot of what he's talking about is just kind of fed to you. And I don't know if part of that is because the main character is 15, and so you're having to see him have a lot of things explained to him. I don't know if that's confusing, but I guess if you've read it, you know what I mean. I don't want to spoil anything, but things are just explained to him a lot. I just didn't feel that there was that much to really think about and explore, and so I just found this one quite boring in comparison to the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, and just not as deep. Okay, that sounds so stupid to say for some reason, but I just how I felt. That's just how I feel. Okay, it's how I feel. All right, so that is it for the books that I read in spring. It's currently June 7th, June 8th, and I have already started my reading for summer, technically, I guess, and I have been having so much fun with the books that I've already been reading in June. I guess I could tell you quickly the books that I DNF'd. I did DNF The Sea Wolf by Jack London, who more popularly has written The Call of the Wild. And then I also DNF'd Cleopatra. I don't remember who it's by. I DNF'd this one like 50% of the way through. And then I DNF'd, what else did I DNF? I swear there's another book I DNF'd. What was it? Oh, I DNF'd The Mortal Immortal by Mary Shelley. That's what it was. That was a little book that I hauled in the nighttime book haul. I DNF'd that one. Like, there wasn't anything bad about it. I just wasn't interested in continuing to read it. That's everything. I hope that you liked this video, and I'll see you next time. Have a good summer, and I hope you had a beautiful spring, okay? Bye.